What the hell happened? Part 13. So, the last video, I went over some backstory of Jezebel, my sister, and what all was kind of taking place to what I know. And before that, I was getting ready to homestead, and the property we were trying to buy fell through. So, we're pretty much chilling at this place, and we were ready to move, and now all of a sudden we can't move, and I have to call up the landlord and say, hey, I know we were going to move out in like half a month, but we really can't because we have nowhere to go. And he was nice enough to let us stay there. At this point, I'm getting fed up with trying to find. This is like the fourth or fifth place we tried to buy. This one got really, really close to actually purchasing, and that whole thing just made it all fall apart. So I was like, maybe just Pennsylvania. I just can't afford Pennsylvania. It's too expensive. I didn't want to leave because I had a good, solid business, and I always knew that at any time, if I needed to do just a few jobs or whatever it was, that I could do that. I had a whole customer clientele, everything was working out good. It was just a safety net. I wanted my safety net, but I was irritated enough at this point that, okay, forget the safety net. Can I go somewhere else that this is going to work out? And so started looking at a bunch of other states. A lot of states made the list, and a lot of states quickly left the list. It's like, well, I want something that's somewhat favorable to the lifestyle I want to live, and if I'm picking anywhere in the country to do it, I can. So a lot of northern states, particularly out west, seemed really good, but I didn't like cold weather. I didn't like the short growing season, any of that. So ended up settling on West Virginia. Once we settled on West Virginia for a homestead, I had no idea where in West Virginia, and the only way I really knew what to do was to go to West Virginia and look around. The pricing was right, the land taxes were low, taxes in general seemed to be low for most things. So ended up taking trips once every 2 weeks to look at 3 or 4 properties, and one of us always stayed behind and the other two would go and cruise around. So we'd call up realtors, research counties that we may or may not want to go in, and physically went and looked at these properties. And it was probably a 3 month period of doing that, and it was pretty grueling to just up and disappear for 2 days and then come back. But we'd go get with realtors, look at land, walk all around each property, try to envision our vision of a homestead on it. Some places were rocky, some places were swampy, some places were really just like completely north facing. We were looking for 20 to 40 acres, something in there. I mean, we had some wiggle room. But we just kept looking, and most of the time, after the first month, we could look at a property in the first 10 minutes, be like, yeah, no, like maybe. But, most of the time we looked at it, it's like, no, this isn't it. Stopped at a diner usually in every town and talked to the locals just to see what they were like. Did they even talk to us? Which they all did. How friendly was the place? So it's just kind of like some research. I love that that's the way we bought land, because that's just an awesome way to do it in an area you're not used to. Eventually, on one of the trips, Delilah and I came onto this property that I'm sitting on right now today, and probably in the first 10 minutes, like, yeah, like it just was looking good, and it just kept looking better, and it just kept looking better, and like it was worlds above the rest. Now this one also happened to be 100 acres, but the pricing wasn't that much more out of our budget than what the 20 to 40 acre plots we had been looking at were. So we had some other properties to look at on the way. My mind wasn't in it. My mind just wasn't in it at all. I wasn't looking at them. Um, this was just the one. And so on the way back to Pennsylvania, I called and said, hey, we want it. Let's, get this going. I still owned my house that I was renting out in Pennsylvania. So that was an added complication, because funding. However, I found a farm credit bank, if you will. It's a union, I guess, and worked with them, and they were extremely reasonable. I think I put 20% down, and the rest they were happily able to finance. So ended up making the purchase. Came out here a couple times, camped out here. Probably wasn't supposed to, but just really wanted to explore it, and it's in the middle of nowhere. Like, once the papers were signed, I felt more comfortable with it. So checked it all out really good. Everything seemed to be good. I just had the matter of I wanted, before I moved, to pay off the land. And so we were trying to kind of figure out how to do that. And somebody who is also a landlord and owns multiple investment properties said, "Hey, you really wanting to sell that place?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to get rid of it." And he said, "Well, I think I'd like to take a look at it." It's like, "You renovated it, right?" And went over exactly what I did and how it was done. And we went over there, looked at it for about 15 minutes, and he said, "Yep, I'll take it." Um, and I was like, "What? Like, we should probably, like, do you need more more stuff?" But yeah, it was just that quick. And he did, like, he didn't even look at it a whole lot. Tenants came with, he was happy with it. The tenants were planning to move out, but that wasn't a big deal because he, was gonna just rent it to other tenants, and he did way better than me because the next tenants he charged way more, and it worked out. It worked out good. Anyway, the house was done. It was sold. Between selling that and what I had available, and there was a mortgage on the house that had to pay, but what I had saved in cash getting ready to homestead, I had enough to pay this off. And so that was really cool. Delilah and I totally paid the property off, and Jezebel was going to purchase all the animals that were needed and everything. And we were going to kind of divvy things up. Like, I was going to build everything and design everything. I was a contractor. It's what I'm good at. It's what I should do. Jezebel was going to do anything animal related. There was all kinds of stuff in her mind. She had been researching regenerative grazing and all these different things, and foraging and different types of houses to make. Like, she was looking at like teepees, and like you could like live in one of those. Like, she did not want a conventional house. I kind of wanted one eventually, but found a good deal on a used camper that I fixed up, and we were going to be fine in that for a bit. All this time I'm talking with my wife Delilah, and we're talking about what is the timeline going to look like, because in a lot of ways she was probably talked into homesteading. I just told her that the way life was currently going and how I'm just going to end up being a contractor working well into my 60s, my hands and knees, because just living in Pennsylvania was so expensive. There was no way to like get ahead of it all. And I'm like, we have to make a change. Like, I can't just keep going the way things are. And she liked things the way things were, because she could just do her babysitting gig a couple days a week, and everything was just fine, and everything was working out good. And so she was very resistant, but I promised her, I'm like, I will, it may take me a few years, but I will make this place amazing. And it's going to take a bit, though. It's going to be very rustic. And we started out extremely rustic once we moved. But it rapidly changed. Once everything was settled, the land was paid off, everything in Pennsylvania was taken care of, all my contracting jobs were wrapped up, I hadn't bid anymore. Moving day finally arrived. And I came out here first, and it was just me, my truck, and the camper. And we had been bringing stuff as we had purchased it. We had been bringing loads of stuff back and forth to the property, just pickup truck loads, just piles of junk essentially. IBC totes, all stuff I ended up using. That whole area where I had stuff stored for using is completely clear, and everything is used. But I had all this stuff, and the very first day I came out here, I knew I needed a storage building because we had a whole household of stuff to move. So this very building I'm sitting in, I looked around the edge of the field, I picked some spot that I was like, this is out of the way, it'll be a great spot for a storage building, and decided on it. Jezebel came out the next day. I said, this is where it is. And together, along with another local here that I hired, we slapped this building up, and we had it dried in right around 7 days. Next up, the early days of building the homestead.